Hello everyone, I am Nithish Parayachan, a student of Elite Institute of Pharma Skills, Pune. In this video, I am going to deliver my presentation on the clinical data management. In today's scenario, pharmaceutical organizations are looking to optimize the clinical development and reduce the redundant data entry while reducing the drug's time to market and the data integrity. Rising research expenditure, regional demand, and evolving local regulatory environment and higher scrutiny regarding safety are causing an upsurge in regional trials, observational studies, and post-launch studies. However, after a clinical trial, a huge amount of raw data is generated, and this needs to be managed properly for the approval of the investigational product from the regulatory authority. What is CDM? CDM is an acronym for Clinical Data Management. Clinical data management is defined as the technology and set of processes that manage the clinical data to produce a high quality, clean and analyzable database. To simply say in the layman's language, clinical data management is a critical phase in the clinical research, and this helps to produce a drastic reduction in the time from the drug development to the marketing. First of all, when we are concerned with the clinical data management, certain basic questions arises in our mind. What is data? Data simply means the information, that is the facts or the figures. Indeed, data is an accounting of the study. Data with reference to clinical data management means the patient or subject's information which is collected during clinical trial, and this is regarded as clinical data. Moving to the further point, where is the data? In the source document. What is the source document? The source document is the first recording. What does it tell? The source document is the data that document the trial. The study was conducted according to the protocol. Now there are a few examples of the source document. Original lab reports, surgical reports, physician's progress report, nurse report, medical record, letters from referring physician, original radiological films, tumor measurement, patient diary or patient information. Moving further, who can collect the data? Subject and subject's family, investigator, subject's own physician, nurses and the research team. These are the key players in the clinical data management. What are the objectives of clinical data management? The term clinical data management was initially proposed by John Clairvaux at Stanford University. According to him, data collection are the paper, electronic and remote data capture, the three ways of data capture. The next is data integration. Data integration means to bring together the data received from all sources in a single database and ensures the consistency and accuracy. Then comes data validation. Data validation are of two types, that is system validation and then data validation. System validation is done via UAT or quality control and programming. Data validation is done via edit check, programs and manual review. Let's see an overview of clinical data management process. Firstly, the investigator collects the data from the subject. Later, the investigator passes the data to the monitor, and monitor then passes the data to the data manager. Whereas the investigator also submits the sample to the central laboratory, and the central laboratory is the one who passes on the lab results to the data management. The data manager then hand over the clinical data to the statistician and clinician. Later, at the final stage, it is been the new drug application is being submitted to the regulatory authority. Each country has its own regulatory authority. The regulatory authority for India is Food and Drug Administration, that is FDA. Let us come to the next point, that are elements of the clinical data management. Data management plan, clinical report, case report form or processing or filing, data entry, validation or query generation, query management, medical coding, quality checks and audits. Well, the detailed study of each element will be described in the further slides. So first, what is data management plan? Data management plan is the plan for study specific data management process. It simply describes the database plan and procedure that will be used for the system testing and validation, and serves as a document for planning, communication and reference tools for the clinical study team. And hence it serves as the backbone of overall quality system of the data management. What are the considerations to be taken place in data management plan? What is the work to be performed? Who is responsible for the work? Which SOP or guidelines will apply? Which documentation or output to collect or produce? What level of quality should be achieved? Moving to the next point, that is elements of the data management plan. Study setup, designing the case report form, track case report form, entering the data, managing lab data, identifying and managing the discrepancies, collecting the adverse event data, coding reported terms, database log, creating reports and transferring the data. The common data management tools are case report forms, common data elements, electronic data capture, audits. Again, we will see this in the further slides. This is how the data management startup task takes place. Now we'll focus on the electronic data capture process. The study information is entered directly into the computer without any paper trail, and that is known as electronic data capture. Initially the data is received, onto the recipient is the quality control, undergoes validation, then issue is identified and query is made. Later, DQF is sent to the site. What is DQF? It is the data query form. DCF or DQF, that is data clarification form or the data query form, is a questionnaire, specifically is the primary data clarifying tool from trial sponsor towards the investigator to clarify the discrepancies. The resolved data query form is received. Database is updated. The quality control of the update is taken place. The audit trial is updated. Coding is performed. Validation takes place. And at last, quality control audit. Case report form workflow. Now what is the case report form? It is the data collection tool for the clinical trial and can be either paper or electronic format. Now let's understand how the workflow of CRF takes place. Initially we receive the CRF, track the CRF pages, create the CRF inventory, data processing, data validation, issue identification, make a query, data clarification form to the site, then send the result. Data clarification form is received, database is updated, quality control of the update, audit trial is updated, it undergoes coding and validation, and finally after quality control audit we get a clean data. Now take a look at this, that is data entry. What is data entry? It refers to the process of transferring the data from the paper CRF to the database in the computer system, and it results in the creation of the electronic data which corresponds to the CRF data. CRF data checks the missing data, incomplete data, illegible data, inconsistent data, incorrect data, and questionable data. Data acquisition includes the single data entry, double data entry, remote data entry, optical character recognition, optical mark recognition, website entry. How can one manage the data collection? Initially set up a plan the case report form to capture the need data, collect the data as it happens, and standardize the data entry procedure. Now this brings to me the database designing. How is database designing done? Plan the way the data is to be structured, data sets defined and coded with alphanumeric codes. These codes are annotated to blank CRF. Based on the protocol requirements, the validation rules are created. A validation plan is written and reviewed by the quality control group and the statistician. The essential characteristics of the database are security, audit trials, reporting, system validation, continuity and standards, null value statistician, inbuilt data validation, case report form receipt, checking and tracking. Now, I would like to turn to the data validation and review, which is another element of CDM. What is data validation? It is an application of the validation rules to the data. Data cleaning or data validation refers to a collection of the activities by data management used to assure the validity and accuracy of the clinical data. It comprises of both logical and statistical checks to detect the impossible values due to data entry errors, coding and inconsistent data. These includes point-by-point check, missing data or blank field check, data consistency check, lab data range check, header inconsistency checks, protocol violation checks, external data checks, textual data checks, and SAE reconciliation. SAE reconciliation means serious adverse event reconciliation. The case report form collects the adverse events reported during the clinical trial conduct. However, there is a separate process which ensures this serious adverse event, and the clinical data manager must ensure this data is reconciled between the process. Now, the next element is medical coding. What do you mean by coding? Data such as concomitant medication, adverse event, medical history and diseases have to be substituted with standard reference terminology, and this is called as coding. There are certain standard global dictionaries such as MEDRA, that is Medical Dictionary for Regulatory Authorities, WHO ART, that is the World Health Organization Adverse Reaction Terms, CTCAE V3.0 Common Terminology Criteria for Adverse Events, SNOMED, that is Systematized Nomenclature of Medicine. Now this pictorial representation illustrates how the medical coding process takes place. Initially accessing the patient's charts, that is followed by pre-coding, CPT and ICD-10 coding, then quality control, quality audit takes place, and later the submission of the coded chart. Then the next element comes is the query generation. First of all, what is query? The data queries means where data entered does not pass validation rules, then a data query may be issued to investigative site where the clinical trial is conducted to request the clarification of the entry. It simply means is an error generated when validation check detects a problem. It can be resolved in several ways, just by correcting the error or by marking the variable as correct. How its process takes place: the data management issues the data clarification forms, that is DCF, which is then followed by site investigator cross-checks with the source document and answers the query form. And finally, the data management updates the database. The next is database lock. Now, how the process of database lock takes place: all CRFs are received in-house, all CRFs are entered and verified, all e-data received and integrated into database, all lab ranges applied, all edit checks performed and all discrepancies resolved, all queries resolved and integrated, and after finishing all these steps, ongoing quality control and review of coding is performed. Then closure of the activities is performed. Then quality assurance audit is completed, and in this way database gets locked. Now I would like to turn on to the next part, that is the final part, that is data storage and archival. All trial related paper documents, including the case report forms and or electronic files, must be stored in a secure and controlled place. Quality control. Now what do you mean by quality control? It is the periodic operational checks within each functional department to verify the clinical data generated, collected, handled, analyzed and reported according to the protocol, good clinical practices and SOPs. The next is audits. There are two types of quality assurance parameters, that is inspection and audits. Inspection and audits. What is audit? Audit is a systematic and independent examination of trial-related activities and documents. Auditing is done by pharmaceutical device companies, CROs and others, whereas the inspection is done by government agency, healthcare authorities and drug regulatory authorities. So there are mainly three types of auditing. So mainly the first one is internal audit or first party audit, which is carried out by the service provider audit department to ensure the implementation, maintenance and improvement of the system audit. The customer audit or the second party audit. It is carried out by the client to evaluate the service provider's performance. The third one is the external audit or the third party audit. It is carried out by the regulators or the external auditors contracted by the sponsor to ensure the implementation and documentation according to the standards. Now we'll focus on why technology is used in clinical data management. This is really an interesting question. It is for more automation, reduces manual input, allows process to be linked, increases the processing speed, stores large volume of data, enables aggregate database to get answer that may eliminate need for a new study, enables global studies, web-based technologies allows site involvement earlier, automates the tracking of the process, eliminates or simplifies steps in the process, more updated information available in real time, reduces chance of human error, electronic data more accurate and eliminates the guessing. Automated queries will have consistent terminology across the site. That's all about the purpose of why the technology is used in clinical data management. As we have come to an end of my presentation, I would like to summarize the clinical data management concept. Now, initially, the conduct of the trial takes place and the data is collected by the investigator from the subjects, and then CRF scanning and indexing takes place. The data entry is performed and the data review and data validation along with the discrepancy management takes place, which leads to the database lock, and at last the analysis and the clinical study report is submitted to the regulatory authority of the nations. So conclusively, I would like to quote that clinical data management is a vital vehicle in the clinical trial to ensure the integrity, accuracy and quality of the data transferred from the trial subject to a database system. Clinical data management plays a key component of the development of new medications, medical procedures and devices. The importance of CDM can be realized from the fact a lot of pure IT companies are now involved in clinical data management activities, and this contributes a big share in their revenue. Hence, India is truly a hub of almost all the clinical trials, and moreover, India's IT sector is growing 25% per year, thus maintaining the complex nature of CDMS at competitive cost cost in India is an added advantage. So abundant skilled personnel in clinical data management in all the areas of CDM is required. That brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. That brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.